special 109 board meeting, the meeting of the Metro Solid Waste Management District for October 27th, 2023. We will call the meeting to order at 5:39. Welcome everyone. And first item of business is the approval of the minutes for the September 22nd meeting. Are there any changes to those minutes, substitutions, additions, corrections from anybody?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as corrected, sent out corrected in the second email today.
We have a motion by Mary Rose to approve the corrected minutes. Do we have a second?
I'll
second.
We have, was that Deborah or Susan?
Both.
Susan.
Okay.
Check whichever.
We have a second.
Either one.
And I just got a note on the screen that Baker has joined.
Good.
Sorry, running late.
Not a problem. Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the minutes. Is there any additional discussion? Hearing none. How have we been doing the minutes? You have to. We've been doing a roll call vote or just voice vote?
Voice vote.
All those in favor of approving the September 22nd meeting minutes signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, nay. Hearing no objections, the minutes for September 22nd are approved. Thank you very much. Pete, do you have the budget report?
Yes, sir. So we have on the screen, if everyone can see it. Can I get a confirmation that you guys can
Yes.
see it? Okay. So this is our current budget. We do have finalized the rollover amount as $1,020,664. Really, there's not a whole lot of change from the last month. I know that recycling receipts were at 50% last month, but had another really good month at the recycling centers. And so we increased that by $5,000. So we are already at this point of the fiscal year at 104% of our recycling receipts, which is good. Our licensing receipts are still running ahead of schedule, but that is to be expected again because this is licensing time. So we should be getting a lot of licensing checks right now. So we are running ahead on that. So overall total revenue, we're at 29%, still a little ahead. And with our expenses, we are probably right there where we need to be, except for the equipment and capital outlay. And that is an item that I'll bring up here in just a minute. But we're running at 22%. So right now, our balance with the rollover is $1,121,888. We have several, these are the larger expenses. $20,000 was to auto container services. This was another payment for the grant carts that we had approved, the $280,000. I don't think that this should take an approval because it was approved previously, the $280,000. It's just another payment on that. The $5,022 for the front load truck payment, October payment. And if you remember, we were paying this monthly instead of annually. So, I'm not sure if we decided that we needed to do a vote on that each month. We did approve the purchase of the vehicle. This is just a payment on that vehicle. And we had 1,072 for MPC promotions, which is feather flags for the pop-up drop-off events. The metal signage was working, but they were a little bit more difficult to handle. These feather flags are really good at identifying what goes into what category. So that was an expense. And then 150 was for the front load truck wrap. That is to get the waste district to get recycle coats publicized on the side of the truck. So we really don't, I think that we've already approved the 2 in red. The other 2 doesn't rise to the level of having to have a formal approval, but I'm open for questions at this point.
Any questions from board members? Okay, hearing none. Does that conclude your budget report for this meeting?
Yes, sir.
All right. Well, thank you very much. The next item we have listed as an action item, but that status has changed. Did everybody, Pete, did you send out, did everybody receive a copy of the letter that Rumpke had submitted?
Yes, everyone should have received that letter, and there was actually a second letter that was received from Ecotech as well. So they did kind of get a late add into the presentation and agenda.
Okay, well, basically, where we are with that is the requirement in our regulations that yard waste cannot be commingled with solid waste was adopted as a regulation some time ago, and during the merger process, our regulations that were in effect at that time were adopted into ordinance by the Metro Council. We had originally, we being the staff, had requested of me that we could give an emergency approval to that request by Rumpke due to their problems with getting with staffing. And then we were going to bring that request to this board meeting, let the entire board discuss it, and let the entire board decide what we wanted to do long term. Also, before I go any farther, I should note that Carl is also present. Welcome, Carl. Anyway, we have since been informed by our council, and I'll let Peter go into a lot more detail with this, but we've since been informed by council that since that particular regulation, or all of our regulations on the books up to that point in time, were adopted in Metro ordinance, we don't have the authority to override the Metro ordinance. I'd like to call on Peter Irvin, our counsel, to explain that in a little better detail than I did.
Happy to, Bob. And I think that it's in the slide that Pete has up there, it's fairly well set out. In particular, in the lower portion of the slide that is highlighted in blue. No yard waste may be commingled in the same waste collection vehicle with any other solid waste placed out for collection in the county unless the vehicle is a single pass or a co-collection type of vehicle. And it's my understanding that we're not talking about single pass or co-collection type vehicles. I would highlight further the third point there. No yard waste may be commingled with other waste in any vehicle hauling out of any transfer facility in the county. There is nowhere in the ordinance that would, to my reading, permit the board to override or grant variance from those requirements in 51509. That is the law of the county, if you will, and I just don't see where the board would have authority to give anyone variance to that. Now, with that said, if you look further at 51300, it requires basic service, must consist of once a week curb collection of household waste and a minimum of once every other week of seasonal collection of yard waste. I don't know what the waste hauler's present pickup schedule is. First, I would suggest that if they are picking up yard waste weekly, separately picking it up weekly, that this ordinance would permit them to change that collection schedule to go every other week. And then Pete has highlighted further the sentence in yellow, that if that continues to be problematic or is nevertheless something that the haulers cannot staff, the board can permit other alternative collection service scenarios if approved by the board. And I distinguish that again from 51509. 51509 is directed to the commingling of the types of waste, yard waste and solid waste. This sentence highlighted in yellow does, in my view, permit a variance by the board from the waste collection cycles to the extent that the board might agree and approve. Maybe it would, maybe you will find that it is better if you would allow for some period of time collection of yard waste every third week. I don't know what you might find here, but I think that you want to examine some of the facts to understand better the nature of the problem. I think that you want to have facts to support whatever decision that you make in that regard.
Are there any questions or comments from board members? I do know that we have representation here tonight. I'm pretty sure from Rumpke and Ecotech. Is there any questions or comments from either of those two representatives?
Bob, I know that Eric Curtis is on the call.
Yeah, I assume Eric, you can hear me. So what I'm hearing is the alternative collection service scenario would not include commingling yard waste with trash. Is that what
Correct.
Yes,
Correct.
sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And who would be able to approve that? Would that be, if it's not the 109 board, who could approve such a variance? And let me back up. Our variance request, quite frankly, was a last resort. I mean, we've been as everyone is, short-staffed and trying to work our way out of this. I am happy to say that we have not, since the variance, the temporary variance was given, we've only used that twice. And as far as this week and even forecasting out into next week, it does not look like we would need to use that either way. But we all know how staffing is. If you look at drive down any street and no one has people. And we're not exempt from that, although we are making headway with that, which I'm very pleased, just from a business standpoint and a customer service standpoint. So I guess my ask is, I don't know that moving our service frequencies is the solution. I don't know. I don't know that that would solve an issue if we were to go back into our staffing conundrum that we've been in. But who would be able to approve a variance, or is that not even on the table?
I don't know that that is an option, Mr. Curtis. The thing is that this is the law and we are bound to follow it. Metro Council could amend the law. That process would be, hopefully, by the time you would get through that process, the problem would no longer exist, I fear.
Right.
But they've adopted the law and they have made the board responsible to enforce it.
Okay.
And in that, they have not given the board the discretion either not to enforce or to, in essence, what you're asking is that they would change their law.
Okay.
And they just don't have that authority in my view.
Understood.
Peter, was there anything in the executive order during the pandemic that covered this situation for essential services?
Bruce, I'm concerned that the answer, from my perspective, is probably not. First, that executive order permits for the commingling of yard waste with recyclables. Now, I don't know how that's supposed to work, but that's what it says. And my guess is that if it were intentional, and for now we have to presume that it was, the idea is that recyclables don't go in the landfill, and so neither does yard waste. So we're going to allow those two things to be commingled. Secondly, the last paragraph of that executive order provides that it should not be interpreted to supersede any local ordinances. So I just don't see any relief there for us.
Okay, thank you.
Peter, under that other alternative collection service scenarios may be used if approved by the board, do you think it would be within the authority of this board to grant to staff the authority to approve one of those scenarios as long as it does not violate 51.509 in order to possibly speed things up to keep somebody from having to wait until the next board meeting or call a special board meeting?
I don't think so, Bob. It's pretty specific in requiring approval by the board.
Okay.
And I know it's an emergent situation for the haulers. I empathize with their position. What I think that we can call a special meeting if necessary on 3 days notice, Pete?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
And we do have the convenience of this medium to meet in, which I would think makes that much more possible. But I'm hoping that some study by the haulers at that as an option will result in them bringing something to you to look at.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Peter. Are there any other questions or comments? Board members, audience members, advisory committee members?
I have a question. Just so I understand clearly, because I do not want to be out of compliance on this. So 2 things. So the temporary variance we were given last week is null and void.
Correct.
Okay. if we were to choose to offer our yard waste customers every other week service, I do not need to come back to the 109 board for any kind of approval, correct?
That's the way I read it. Peter, do you concur?
I concur.
If I choose to do anything outside of that, whether it would be halting yard waste service or going to every 3-week or once a month service, which quite frankly is not, I don't believe any of those are the solution. I need to come back to the 109 board for approval for that, correct? Just so
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Yeah, and it's a tough time of year on the yard waste.
Yeah, this couldn't happen in the middle of the summer.
Right, all the leaves.
Correct. And as I said, we have actually utilized we've been fairly fortunate in the hiring process, and we've kind of pulled resources from other areas to help us. But more importantly, I get the feeling we are getting ourselves out of this staffing mess. Although that could turn on a dime, as anyone that's run a business understands that. But I am pleased to say that since we've gotten this, we've used it sparingly, and I don't intend to make any requests, at least as I forecast out. It was just simply a request for the next couple months till we are fully certain, especially with the volume of yard waste that we will be faced with, as everyone knows, in the next 3 to 4 weeks. So,
Yeah.
I guess with that being said, I appreciate your time.
Well, thank you very much. Again, any other questions or comments?
Yeah, I have a comment or an observation, I guess. As a 109 board member, I see that we are trying to direct in the best way possible essential services. And because of the pandemic and the hiring situation that we have, this is a real issue right now. It has to be a service that continues. And I understand, how the people who are providing it are having issues with it. I kind of feel helpless to be able to help both them and the public to get this essential service done. And I wonder if there's anything that Peter or somebody else could suggest of something that we could do, because I think it's our responsibility to try to help as much as we can in this situation.
Well, one of the alternatives that the public has and has always had, and we've tried to promote, but I'm not sure how much help it would be on short notice like this. But if, we have tried in the past to convince people that to compost the yard waste on their property and use it as a beneficial reuse on their property works, and that can reduce to an extent the amount that they have to put out for collection. That's one option, but how you get that word out quickly and cogently in an emergency situation or semi-emergency situation like this, I'm not quite sure, unless we just look to Karen. She's already worked one miracle tonight, so.
Hey, Rose, from the legal perspective, I think that what's highlighted there in yellow, the other alternative collection service scenarios may be used if approved by the board. I think that really is it. And so that our hands are tied beyond how we might alleviate the scheduled pickups. But it would not permit the commingling of the waste.
Give me I guess an estimated timeline or a scenario on how this could be brought in front of Metro Council to change the regulation.
You would need to find a member on there to sponsor the amendment, Bruce. you'd want to put together language, what you're proposing, how you would propose that it would be changed, and the reasons therefore. And then you would need to find a member of the council who would sponsor it. It then goes through a committee process, first reading, second reading, and I don't know the particulars, but I think you would be talking about a minimum of probably a 3-month period of time. And it could be greater than that.
And you stated that the yard waste can be mixed with the recyclables, but not with the MSW, correct?
Correct.
Which I think is an error in our ordinance or whatnot, because we certainly don't want to contaminate our recyclables.
I wouldn't think we would want to, but that's the way that order was written.
Yeah,
That's not our work. That's the work from the state.
just as a point of clarity, Bruce, that doesn't have anything to do with the ordinance. That was the emergency order issued by the governor, where that was contained.
Okay.
Is there's a possibility that we could have a broader countywide education right now that would tell people that, it's imperative that you kind of try to use your yard waste on your own property or to utilize some of the drop-off sites because of the staffing shortages in the industry of Jefferson County right now. And maybe that takes a little bit of pressure off of the collectors out there. Is that something that would interest people?
But what about dropping off at the community garden sites? That would be a good use of yard waste, and possibly people who would be willing to look for an alternate way to get rid of their yard waste could take them to community, like a pop-up drop-off. We'd have a pop-up compost drop-off at community gardens because we do have them all over the county.
I think that any
That's it.
message like that would come from the district or the board would certainly make Mr. Curtis and other haulers delivery of alternative schedules to their customers more understood or better understood if we were out there substantiating the need.
Yeah, I think we could direct staff to work on this from any possible angle. I don't think we as a district have I don't want to say authority, but I think it would be a mistake for us to try to, without a lot of consultation with the people that operate the community gardens, to just say drop materials off there, because the community gardens people then don't have the capacity or the wherewithal to be able to compost that stuff. And then the size of the community gardens are such that I could see that becoming overwhelmed very, very quickly. So I think what we probably should do is direct staff to work on this with the haulers and any other concerned people to see what we can come out with, if anything, to help alleviate this.
Mr. Schindler, if I could, I think it's a really good idea to try to help alleviate some of the strain through the education. But longer term, would it be something that the Waste District would pursue to amend ordinance to give it the authority in cases of natural disaster or emergency declarations to be able to have that authority again?
Yeah, I think that would be a reasonable thing to take a look at. Yeah, I wouldn't see any problem with looking at that and exploring that option.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, go ahead.
Hello.
Oh, okay. Bruce, you didn't want to say anything?
No, I'm sorry, Pete, if you could restate because I had a phone call come in, I missed the last part that you stated. Could you restate that for me, please?
You asking for me to restate?
Yes.
Yes, I think it would be prudent for the Waste District to longer term to ask Metro Council to make amendment to the ordinance that would give the board the authority to be able to make these decisions in cases of natural disasters or emergencies. Because while we have not had a ice storm or Hurricane Ike again, it's probably out there. And sometimes these decisions may have to be made. So something to consider is what I was suggesting, Bruce.
Good, okay. And I just want on behalf of Rumpke to thank the board for its consideration. And our goal, as always, is to remain in compliance and do the right thing. So yeah, I appreciate your consideration. I understand from Peter's explanation that, it's in Metro Council's hands, and any work we can do along the lines that you just stated, Pete, I think would be a smart move on our part so that we can adapt to any unforeseen circumstance that may arise within the county.
Well, and you realize, of course, Bruce, that when we start discussing that, the first people we're going to look to is the advisory committee.
Well,
So
that's fine. That's we've got broad shoulders on the advisory committee, so.
Well, I realize that. I appreciate that, and we hate to keep dumping on you all, but we appreciate the work you all do.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, this is Brian Slade. How are you this
Yes.
evening? I wanted to just comment that Pete's last suggestion, I think, is prudent. These times have been unprecedented in our industry and really in many industries with COVID and other circumstances. We are fortunate. My request was not because we're not fully staffed. Our residential services sector is fully staffed. But as most of you know, during leaf season, there are additional resources involved, people and trucks. And so our request was to prepare in the event that the leaf season is extraordinary this year. That would create strain on us that we have not experienced in the past, where we have had additional employees that assist during very heavy leaf season. So I just wanted to make that comment about our request. And I did know Pete had mentioned to me that there were alternative options in the event that things became significant during leaf season. And I appreciated that comment from Pete earlier today while we were talking on the phone. So in conclusion, I do think that Pete's suggestion is a good one so that we have the option in the future if circumstances like this present themselves in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Brian. Any other comments or
Bob,
questions?
I have a question for you.
Yes, ma'am.
Who do we turn to get the language for this ordinance? I mean, I think that doing this sooner than later is better. And so I just wonder who we ask. I mean, we pretty much have the intent of the ordinance already stated by you and by Pete. And so I just wonder who does somebody on our staff do this, or do we try to come up with this and run it past Peter Irwin, or how do we do this?
Well, our normal process with this would be to ask staff to get with the advisory committee, and since the advisory committee has members of the industry on the committee, as well as environmentalists and citizens, it gives you a broad structure to start working on this in the proper language that would satisfy the possible need and fit within the intents and the goals of the waste management district. So it would start by asking staff to work with the advisory committee, and start working on this as part of their regular operations.
I would think if we had it sooner, that we could even have a special meeting to approve sending it to Metro Council even before our next meeting. I think it should be done soon is the main point of my comment. So.
Okay. Well,
I-
Pete and Bruce, would you
Sorry.
all consult on that?
Yes, we can. I think, Bob, we don't necessarily have to have the advisory committee's input if the advisory committee is involved. If the 109 board wants to come back and have a special meeting. So it's kind of like, instead of having it go there and come back, if we kind of do it with the board, but with as many people on the advisory committee to be present and just have a big discussion at that point. I think that would be the fastest way through it. So, I'm not sure that we have to take the step of going through the advisory committee if we still have the advisory committee's input at a board meeting. Just my suggestion.
Yeah, I would agree, but I would think it would be a lot more productive if you could come to the meeting with some ready language and concept to pursue, rather than try to hash all that out as a committee of the whole in a board meeting.
Understood.
And we could go as far, Pete, as to schedule an emergency advisory committee meeting if necessary. Because I appreciate Mary Rose's comments.
Yes, sir. Well, staff will work to get some language together, and we'll get with Bruce, and if we feel like that we're ready to go to an emergency meeting of the advisory committee, we can do so. And turn around, and if the advisory committee comes up with an approval, then we can potentially have a special meeting of the 109 board as well.
Yeah, and I don't mean to imply that we have to follow some formal procedure with the advisory committee working with staff, because I don't think that's that whole process of how the advisory committee can, in the conjunction with our with staff, comes up with something to present to the board, or staff comes up with something to present to the board. There's no formal process that you guys have to follow. So whatever works best, I think we'd be willing to entertain whatever language or suggestions that can be brought to us.
And any and all support as a 109 board would be greatly appreciated at those advisory committee meetings, because we're talking about situations, it's kind of like force majeure, it's outside of the control, unexpected situations that we may need to pivot on a dime, and we need to have the ability to do so.
So I would appreciate it if you all would start working on that, Pete.
We will.
And Bruce.
Sir.
Okay. Any other questions or comments from board members or from anybody in the audience? Okay, thank you all very much. And I will apologize to Rumpke and to Ecotech if our initial actions of last week gave anybody any false hopes on this. So, but I'm glad Peter's there to offer to keep us within our bounds.
No apologies necessary, Mr. Schindler. Peter, you're the bad guy. So, I'm sure you've been there before.
I'm used to it, Bruce.
I figured as much. Thank you.
It doesn't mean I like it, though. I have great empathy for where you are.
Well, it's obviously we appreciate you keeping us within the term or within the scope of compliance. So thank you.
Okay, I see no old business. Is that anything you need to bring up, Pete?
No, sir.
New business. Pete.
Yes, there is, and I'm not sure how many people were around through the last 5-year solid waste management plan cycle. Solid waste management plan is basically our county's review of its solid waste management system, and that includes disposal, that includes waste collection, that includes our recycling, it includes our illegal dump and litter and enforcement ordinances. So it's a thorough review that's done every 5 years, and it lays out the strengths and weaknesses of each one, and it comes with an action plan. And that action plan is what we intend to do in the next 5 years. So there's a lot of training that goes on with that. And I'm just going to kind of go through what the state suggests as their timeline. And I will be sending more information to you guys in the next several months about how 5-year plans are supposed to work. But their timeline for this is that you should start planning now. And that's why they're offering some trainings. There is some other trainings if anybody's interested, and I can get you guys linked up to that. I can tell you that the class is about 6 to 7 hours to go through this 5-year solid waste management plan. So in February, in January and February, they tell you to go ahead and start to begin discussions with the governing body and the advisory committee. So this is telling us, the staff, that we need to start having good discussions with you guys. In March, it's getting into the plans as far as the details, confirming the entities to be included in the area designation, and Jefferson County is the only area designation. Evaluate our practices and so on, all the way through to April and July when we have a draft. And August, we have to begin a 30-day public notice period, public notice and comment period. So the members of the public can see this plan, they can make comment, and then we would have a public hearing, and the board would decide to adopt the plan or approve the plan. Once it's approved, then it goes to the state for their approval. I can tell you that the plan itself is extremely important. It's a format that is not easy to follow, but it's all laid out in KRS what we need to do. It can be very involved, or it can not be hardly involved at all. Just depends upon what we want to put in our plan. So like I said, it's going to cover background information, collection system, disposal, recycling reduction, open dumps and litter, facility siting, which has to do with local determination, meaning the state won't issue a permit until it gets approval by this board, and enforcement and financial mechanisms. So we'll be getting more into this. I just wanted to kind of give you guys a heads up that it's coming. It's a long process. I'll be sending out a PowerPoint to you. Read it, go through it at your own leisure. And I'll be offering some trainings from the state so that you can get the details of it. So just wanted to give you guys a heads up on that as it moves forward. Is there any questions about it at this point?
Yeah, Pete, my memory of this, I don't think anybody on this board other than myself has been involved in a 5-year plan. Am I correct? Everybody on the current board is new enough that they weren't around when you did the last 5-year plan?
I believe you are correct.
So along that line, if I'm sure you can do this, if any current board member would like to, if you haven't seen the current plan, or you don't have a copy available to you of the current plan to get an idea of, what this thing looks like when you're finished with it, I'm sure you'd be able to provide board members with a copy of the current plan, right?
Yes, sir. It's actually on our website. So anybody with the LouisvilleWasteDistrict.org can go there, and you can, it's one of the things that you can select and download the plan along with all of its appendices. It's a large plan. Obviously, it's probably 150 pages or 200 pages long. Once you get all of the things in there that they request, because you got to remember they're asking for documentation, like every type of citation that you would issue in a solid waste they want a copy of it. Any warning letters, they want copies of it. So a lot of appendices. The plan itself isn't all that big, but the appendices are.
Okay, we will look forward to that. Actually, it's not all that bad. It's as far as the board goes, it's the staff that ends up putting a huge amount of work, and depending on in some instances, the advisory committee puts in a chunk of work on putting this thing together.
Yes.
Any other questions or comments on that? Okay. The Mayor's Board and Commission meeting review.
Right. I just wanted to put this on the agenda as the meeting took place yesterday, and it's about a 2-hour meeting. And anybody that didn't make it, please, any board member that did not make it, please get in contact with me so that I can let the mayor's office know, as everybody needs to go through it. It did contain a lot of detailed information about ethics, open meetings act, what your duty is as a board member to keep the staff in check, or the overview of what we do. So I just wanted to put this here as a way for you guys to have a little bit of an open forum to get your thoughts, and if you had any concerns that you wanted to address to the staff.
I'm always the one who'll talk, but I will say that I think Althea Jackson did an outstanding job, and that the training covered things that I've heard from many other different boards and commissions, but it was very succinct, and it was all done in 2 hours, and very clearly done and very professionally done. And it kind of put things together in my head again of what a board member should do. And I thought it was very good.
And they actually got it done in less than 2 hours.
That's right. 20 minutes early.
Yeah. Okay, moving right along, advisory committee report.
I'm sorry, I guess that's me.
Yes, sir.
Obviously, we are still working in subcommittee mode, but we did receive a excellent presentation from Pete Flood with regard to the separation of material at the Waste Reduction Center, as well as the issues that Andy Reynolds and Bill, and I'm going to mess this name up, I apologize in advance, but I'm reading it as Jabawi from Waste Management, the challenges that they said they were going to have to overcome to provide separate containers for different commodities at the Outerloop landfill. Next month, we'll have a presentation from Republic Services, and we, Rumpke, will present our concerns as well with the proposal to segregate loads coming in by the hauler, by the self-haul customer, into different boxes that contain, whether it be steel, wood, um, single stream recycling, cardboard, anything like that. I recognize the fact that I did offer a trip to the new transfer station, Pete. That offer still stands, but I do apologize. This is the first time in years where I've taken 2 weeks vacation in a row. So I'm still digging out from those 2 weeks. I enjoyed vacation. I wish I was still on it. But I guess those days will eventually come. But I will get with you with some, dates available, and we can do that. And if there's any board member that has not seen the material recovery facility or the MRF in Cincinnati, we can set up a tour there as well. So that's kind of where we are. I don't know if Sandra or Greg are on the call.
Yes, I am.
Greg, would you like to go over your subcommittee's work thus far?
Okay. Yeah, I'll try. And if anybody wants to chime in, oops, it just went away.
Greg, are you the ICI self-haul?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, I think. So we, like Bruce was saying, we've been discussing a lot of things, and one of the things we were talking a lot about is the subcommittee discussed the draft of proposed recycling requirements, and there was concern because original was labeled as an ordinance, and we're not ready to make an ordinance yet by any means. So what we've been doing is just discussing a lot of things back and forth and getting good input from people. And then one thing we didn't want to do was duplicate efforts, so to have to discuss everything in the subcommittees and the advisory board. So I think we're going to do some stuff back as an advisory board too, if I'm correct. And other than that, I think, it's just we're working. I think we're making progress. It seems like we have good meetings and good discussions. There's talk about the legality and everything, and the haulers are giving very good input with all that, and the staff is doing good about coming back with results. So I think it's just a matter of time. Any other input from anybody else that was?
No, I think you covered it fairly well. The one thing I wanted to add to the board, when we have these presentations from the haulers, those are done at the complete advisory committee level.
Right.
Subcommittee level.
Yeah, we wanted to make sure we didn't have to have them come to the subcommittees and then the advisory also, right?
Sandra,
Yeah, I'm here.
can you see the screen, Sandra?
I can see the screen and thank you very much. You can tell that we're still working in regard to the mixes and with asphalt and specifically with shingles. There are a lot of issues attached to it, and Pete has done a good job in laying out the process that looks like will go forward. A recommended mix changes at the level of putting together bids and what the standards for those would be at Frankfurt. And then we're also looking at who would be doing the work to achieve this, whether or not the final product would be used by public agencies, including small cities. And this was just one of the particular things we were talking about with asphalt. We've also been looking at gypsum and concrete to see what we can recommend in regard to those. And you can see on your screen that Pete has anticipated this and put them down. That's about it.
The only thing I would like to add, Chairman Schindler, is that Greg and Sandra have been doing an excellent job leading these subcommittees and trying to at least move the ball forward, if you will. We've got a tough task in front of us, but there has been great headway made. So thank you to Greg and Sandra.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bruce. Yeah, I'll echo that. You all, anybody on the advisory committee, I really appreciate the effort that you all put into this. I really do. Do we have any questions or comments from anybody on either part of the advisory committee report? Okay, well, Greg, Sandra, and Bruce, thank you all very much for your report. I see no staff report, Pete.
That's correct.
We're down to the announcements.
Announcements, next 109 board meeting is November 24th at 5:30. We're bumping up against Thanksgiving, so that might be something that you guys want to consider if you want to amend that date. The residential construction and demolition and subcommittee meets November 9th at 2. The Self-Haul ICI subcommittee on November 17th, again with the advisory committee following 15 minutes thereafter. All of these meetings are still virtual, so easy to attend. All of our minutes and agendas can be found on our website, LouisvilleWasteDistrict.org.
Does November 24th present any problem to any staff, board, or advisory committee members?
I will have visitors in from out of town, but, you know, I just have to wait and see how it's going at that time.
I'm
Anybody?
good. I'm good for that day.
I'm okay with that day.
Yeah, I should be okay.
Should be fine.
Well, pending any major development in an area, I guess Pete will just leave it on the 24th.
Yes, sir.
Do we have any other questions, comments, presentations from board members, members of the audience? Okay, well, thank you all very much for participating in this month's meeting. I guess we'll entertain a motion for adjournment. Okay, I'll move we adjourn.
Deborah made one. I think she's muted.
Okay, all right. Move and second for adjournment. Thank you all very much for attending, and thank you for your participation, and thank you all very much.
Thank
See you all next week.
Bye-bye.